be able to dig in a little bit deeper in terms of who's using BIM and the value they're getting from it. So I'm with Dodge Data and Analytics. I'm the Industry Insights Research Director there. I've been with Dodge for over 25 years. Hopefully everyone on the call is familiar with Dodge, at least our Dodge Construction Central, North America's leading provider of construction information. Hopefully a lot of you also know about suites, where you can go to really get great information about building products. But what a lot of people aren't as aware of is that Dodge also has a lot of research capabilities, including custom market research, which is the division that I'm in. We can either do private custom market research, or we often join with industry partners on researching industry insights and trends. And we look at a variety of different topics that we think are really having an impact on the construction industry. So, you can see the list here, but the key point in this slide is that blue box. Please know that all the research that we publish in association with our partners is available for free. Excuse me. At construction.com/toolkits/report. So, that also includes the BIM series of SmartMarket reports that we've done. So the report that I'm about to walk you through is this latest in a series of publications that have looked at the business value of BIM. We've looked at it based on different regions in the world, based on different project types, different ways of using BIM, aspects of the model-based digital workflows. And again, all of these are available on construction.com for free download. User types is another one, and this forms this last category. This is the newest addition to this last category. So again, we're going to go through the study. What the study really focuses on is how mechanical contractors are using BIM, the degree to which they're doing so, how it's specifically helping them drive fabrication, and then its benefits and obstacles. So let's first talk a little bit about what the study is itself. So we did an online survey of contractors. We actually surveyed both users and non-users, but we found that in mechanical construction, at least among the lists that we were using, the BIM users predominated. So we actually didn't have a large enough sample of non-users to really make it worthwhile to focus on in the report. So instead, we focus just on the BIM users, and all of the findings I'm going to present to you are only from those using BIM. We divided up the findings into 4 different types of contractors: sheet metal ducting contractors, mechanical piping, plumbing, and multi-trade. And you'll see as I go through the presentation, nearly all the data is presented based on their specific responses. I also am not going to read through the study definition of BIM, but I wanted to present it to you on the slide because I wanted you to know that we kept it deliberately broad. We were very interested in how they're using BIM, not just how they're modeling, but how they're using models that are given to them by others and others. So we kept the definition of BIM very broad. The study does also feature an advisory council and the set of interviews. Experts, real people who have been deeply engaged with BIM for years, who shared their insights with us. You can see there's a list of really interesting feature articles. BIM standards is a really hot issue right now for mechanical contractors, and there's several other things and a couple of case studies too. But let's dive into the findings. So first we're going to look at the use, how these mechanical contractors and HVAC contractors are using mechanical models. And from our advisory board interviews, the senior director at Southland says, to a certain extent, you don't really have a choice in adopting BIM if you really want to collaborate well with other team members. And I think that really sets the stage for the degree of use of BIM that we saw. So first we just wanted to know, obviously they're starting with models often that they're presented with from other members of the project team. So we want to know, where are you getting models from before you do your own modeling? And as you can see, it's largely the design team that's providing models to them. They get far fewer models. They get models on a far smaller percentage of their projects from general contractors or BIM service providers. And we asked them as well, okay, are you responsible on your projects for producing a model? And while you can see that nearly all of them are responsible for on at least some of their projects for producing a model, there's a really strong emphasis amongst sheet metal, ducting contractors, and multi-trade contractors on having that responsibility, with about half reporting that they do so on 75% or more of their projects. So it is very, very common for them to be responsible for producing a model. And in fact, most of them report that they exceed contractual requirements when they are responsible for producing the model. But as you saw, they don't always produce the model, and even when they do, it's very common for them to use in-house resources. Clearly, most of these firms do have in-house resources to produce models. On 75% or more of their projects, 50% or more of them are all producing the model in-house. But there's still a notable percentage that are producing it out. And one of the things that really makes a difference about whether they're producing the model themselves or not is very much the size of the firm. If it's a firm with 50 million or more in revenue, 60% or more said, yes, we are producing models on 75% or more of our projects. But if you're a small firm with less than $10 million in revenue, it's a much lower number, 23% who say they're producing models that frequently. And who are they going to when they're not producing their own models? Well, here we saw a wide variation based on the type of contractor. We see that sheet metal and ducting contractors, they're really getting models from engineering firms. And that's, their main source if they're not producing them themselves. Mechanical piping contractors, they're going to third-party BIM service providers. And plumbers really, and to a lesser degree, multi-trade contractors really aren't as frequently going to anyone to get their models. So now that we know how often they're modeling, where they're getting their models from, let's look at how they're using the models before construction even begins for analysis. And we're going to look at several different types of analysis, the first one being spatial coordination. So one thing you'll note is how high the percentages are at the top of each of these bars, that most of these contractors have experience with spatial coordination on at least some of their projects. And when you look at those who have the greatest experience, sheet metal and ducting contractors are using spatial coordination on 100% of them are using it on at least some of their projects. And nearly half of them in the mechanical piping contractors are using it on all of their projects. And when you look at the multi-trade contractors, those who don't specialize in sheet metal, mechanical piping, or plumbing, 65% say that they're using spatial coordination on all of their projects. So very commonly used. And the president of US Engineering really spoke to that this isn't even just something that they're now masters of, that they still see such potential for this to grow in the future, that they believe artificial intelligence will become a real consideration where the first pass of coordination will be done by the machine instead of by an individual. So really an eye to the future there. The next area of analysis that we asked them about is quantity takeoffs for estimating. Here again, we see those percentages at the top of the bars, especially for sheet metal and ducting contractors, mechanical piping and multi-trade contractors are pretty high, that most of them are doing quantity takeoffs for estimating on at least some of their projects. However, when we look at the percentage who are doing that on all of their projects, that dark green section of the bar, we see that is much lower. So this is, not as well established as the previous one. Next type of analysis is constructability analysis. Again, it's exceedingly common for sheet metal ducting contractors and multi-trade contractors to do this on at least some of their projects. Nearly all report that they do so, and about half of them do it on all of their projects. It's less common, though, amongst mechanical piping and plumbing contractors, although with about 2/3 still at least familiar and using it on at least some of their projects. Clearly, this is something that there's some expertise on in the industry. Construction sequencing, we see a slightly different pattern. Here, again, sheet metal contractors are one of the highest users, with 85% using it on at least some of their projects. We do see mechanical piping and multi-trade contractors both above 70%. Plumbing contractors are far less frequently using construction sequencing, unless you look at the intensity of use. So if you're a sheet metal, mechanical piping, or multi-trade contractor, it's not that common for you to use construction sequencing on all of your projects. But look at the plumbers. More than half of those who are doing it at all are doing it on all of their projects. Finally, shop drawings, which by far have the greatest intensity of use of any of these pre-construction analysis types. So sheet metal ducting contractors, again, 100% are doing it on at least some of their projects. And multi-trade contractors, we see it's nearly as high. But it's high across the board. Even the plumbers, who are the lowest, almost 3/4 are doing it on at least some of their projects. And again, well over half of the sheet metal ducting, mechanical piping, and multi-trade contractors are doing shop drawings on all of their projects. And, you know, as the Vice President of Support Operations at Brandt says, engineers create contract drawings, but BIM creates shop drawings. So this is, you know, and when we really look at the most common uses of BIM for analysis, it's clear that shop drawings is number one. All these bars represent the percentage who are using each of these methods on 50% or more of their projects. And so you can see that shop drawings, spatial coordination are well established. Constructability evaluation is strong, but that quantity takeoffs for estimating and sequencing are still emerging. Now, we also wanted to know, okay, when you don't do this in-house, do you use third-party BIM service providers to do any of these functions? And it is pretty clear that mechanical piping contractors, plumbers, and multi-trade contractors are using third-party BIM service providers relatively frequently for spatial coordination and shop drawing. We see less use of third-party BIM service providers in general for sheet metal and ducting contractors. All right, so what is the impact of doing all of this? What is the impact of BIM on workflows? And first, there's that question about, well, does it make the development of shop drawings actually faster? And we'd say that for the most part, most agree, especially among the sheet metal, ducting, and mechanical piping contractors, that it does make it faster, although there's still a percentage who actually feels it makes development slower. 31% of the sheet metal contractors feel that way. So it's a little bit of a split finding on that one. Among those who do say it's faster, though, really it's the sheet metal ducting and mechanical piping contractors that really see the advantage, with well over 30% reporting that it's 20% faster or more. I mean, that really has a pretty major impact on their projects. And also, we asked them about the frequency with which they extract material quantities on projects. And you can see again that the plumbers doing it, the plumbing contractors are doing it a little bit less frequently than the sheet metal, ducting, mechanical piping, and multi-trade contractors, where about half say they're doing it on 50% or more of their projects. The one area that's definitely emerging that we asked about, though, is the use of BIM for estimating. Less than half report doing it on any of their projects. And the vast majority of those who are using it are doing it on less than 1/4 of their projects. So this is still an area where the mechanical and HVAC contractors are trying to figure out. And one of our advisory council members, the vice president for corporate technology at Hill Group, really, had that estimating piece that he could talk about. And he pointed out that they were able to integrate their estimating software with their BIM technologies. So estimating, fabrication, and BIM are all part of one software system. They have multiple opportunities because of this to round trip information, so that they can use it for the estimate, but then they can use it through the job closeout as well. The value of this is really high once they are able to get everything to work together. So that's their use before construction starts. How are they actually using BIM in the field? Well, we do see, again, these high percentages at the ends of the bars in terms of anyone using it to export data from models for layout in the field. The larger part of the bars, especially for sheet metal and ducting and multi-trade contractors, is those who are doing it on 75% or more of their projects. We also see pretty wide use of BIM robotic total stations for layout in the field. And what is the impact of using BIM for accuracy? Well, you can see why we get such high usage when nearly all of them are reporting that they see improved productivity in the layout process. The vast majority of all, except for the plumbing contractors, see it increasing the speed, and even over 50% of those do that. And the increasing the accuracy of location, also very common. And I do want to point out here too, and this is critical, that this is a rating question that we asked here to get these responses. So they were asked to rate it from no impact through low, moderate, high, and very high impact. And all the percentages you're seeing on this slide are just those who reported a high or very high positive impact. So this isn't even the percentage who are seeing improved productivity is increasing the speed and increasing accuracy. This is just a percentage who said, no, we see it to this really high degree. So obviously, it's not surprising that we see such a large level of pickup on that. We do see, again, on the high, very high impacts, we do see slightly less impact, but still notable impact on RFIs. I want to draw your attention to the two sets of bars at the bottom of the page. Reducing the number of RFIs that are rejected due to insufficient information, 40% or more of the mechanical piping and multi-trade contractors see a really high impact of BIM on reducing those RFIs. And then reducing the number of RFIs in the construction phase. You can see that it's not that frequent on the upper left-hand corner to reduce the number of RFIs generated in the pre-construction phase. But when it comes to reducing the number of RFIs in the construction phase, again, nearly half of the mechanical piping and multi-trade contractors report that BIM has a really high impact on this. And then finally, let's look at the impact of BIM on key project metrics due to their use of it during construction. So we see that only a little bit under 1/3, for the most part, say that they see a reduction in the number of projects that are not completed within the original schedule. So while, again, this is just those who are seeing a high, very high impact on that number of projects, but still, especially for the mechanical piping and multi-trade contractors, it's notably less than those who see a reduction in the number of projects that are not completed within the original budget. It's really budget where those mechanical piping and multi-trade contractors are seeing an advantage. And again, they're the ones who are also seeing a pretty high impact from their use of BIM on increasing the number of projects that are properly synchronized among the planning, execution, and purchase departments in their organizations. And the group BIM manager at AG Coombs really talked a lot about how they use BIM on site, and they were doing some really interesting things. They were using a lot of different tools, apps to take photos on site, but the key advantage is that idea of site capture with BIM. They do a lot of 3D point cloud scans. It reduces manual major time while it's on site. And it proves great accuracy, but it also validates what they built. So they've really been able to use it again, not just at the beginning, but all the way through to really validate where they are at and maintain budget in a very specific way. All right, now when we spoke to the mechanical contractors, both in the advisory council and in the survey, as you'll soon see, one of the biggest advantages that they find from using BIM is model-driven fabrication. You'll see, though, that when we look at how frequently the mechanical contractors are using prefabrication, it really is a big focus for them. And the senior vice president of the Brandt companies really felt that one of the major advantages of BIM is that a proper BIM process generates an opportunity to allow planned prefabrication to reduce on-site risk. And we're going to get into details about exactly what the contractors see when they use BIM to prefabricate mechanical assemblies. But first, before we look at the benefits, let's look how frequently it happens. And this one's interesting because if you just focus on the percentages at the end of the bars, this looks very similar to a lot of the other findings I've been reporting, with the vast majority using it on at least some of their projects. However, unlike a lot of the previous charts, here we see a relatively even split and across all four types of contractors between those who are using BIM to prefabricate mechanical assemblies on less than half of their projects and those who are using it on half or more. So it's widely used across the industry. Nearly all are doing at least some prefabrication, but they're not using prefabrication on, necessarily on all of their projects. And the most commonly reported types of prefabricated assemblies were ducts and plumbing and piping. So we're going to go through the benefits now of prefabrication, and there's a lot of data on each of these slides. So I wanted to walk you through exactly what the data means before we go through and do the individual reporting. So the first thing is, for each benefit, I'm going to present you up in bold, up in the top there, an average percentage reporting improvement. So this is across all of the 4 different types of contractors. I'm also going to provide you with details on exactly who reported improvements. And, so the percentage you see at the top there in bold is an additive version between these 2 bars. So the percentage reporting improvement, for example, of plumbing contractors in this case is 80%. And then the average across all 4 of these bars is 90%. So, I'm probably, in the interest of time, just largely going to focus on the average overall percentage. But you'll be able to see who's really seeing it much better versus better. But then what we really get down in brass tacks is, among those who said better or much better, we say, okay, did you see an impact of 10% or more? They actually rated their impacts across a bunch of different percentages, but we're just going to focus on those who saw impacts on their projects of 10% or more, because that's where it really starts making a huge difference. And we'll see which ones who are benefiting from it are benefiting the most. So the first benefit that we're looking at for model-based prefabrication is material waste. And we see 90% report that they see this benefit. That 90% say, yeah, my projects, when I use model-based prefabrication, I reduce waste. And when it comes to who's seeing the impact of 10% or more on waste, well, we see that the 2 leaders are definitely the plumbing contractors and the mechanical piping contractors, who are well over 50% at reporting that impact of 10% or more. But the multi-trade contractors are right behind them, with nearly half reporting the same level of impact. It's only the sheet metal ducting contractors that are less frequently experiencing impacts at that level. All right, let's look at labor costs next. So 88% of the contractors we surveyed said that they saw improvements in their labor costs. And look at these percentages. On those who saw labor costs reduced by 10% or more, think about what a big chunk labor cost is of the overall cost for these contractors. And yet 60% of the sheet metal ducting contractors and 58% of the plumbers saw 10% or more reduction in labor costs, and nearly half of the mechanical piping and multi-trade contractors report the same. And the vice president of corporate technology for Hill Group said, look, we've seen jobs where you're driving over 60% of the total mechanical labor on the job into the prefabrication shops based on effort from the BIM process. So, really strong endorsement of that finding. Next, we're going to look at another key project indicator, which is the quality of installed work. And here, still 86%, the vast majority say, yes, we get better quality when we use model-based prefabrication. And 64% of the plumbing contractors report that they see improvements in quality of 10% or more. 58% of the mechanical contractors, and then 40% or more of the sheet metal ducting and multi-trade contractors. So again, a pretty big impact overall. We go from something as nebulous and big as quality to something extremely specific yet, avoiding the purchase of extra pipes and fittings. 85% of the mechanical contractor and HVAC contractors who participated in the survey saw improvements in that, about their ability to avoid purchase of extra pipes and fittings from using model-based prefabrication. Much more precise understanding of what they need. And half of the mechanical piping and plumbing contractors saw those purchases go down by 10% or more. Schedule performance, we see 84%, again, on really the sheet metal contractors are big on the better, but they actually kind of average out to the same as everyone else when you average both better and much better together. 84% report schedule improvements when they use prefabrication. Plumbers, the plumbing contractors, they're the big beneficiaries. But mechanical piping and multi-trade contractors also frequently report high impacts from that. And then worker safety is the next one. Now, we're already, what, 6 benefits in? And we still have 79% saying, yes, this is much better when we use prefabrication. And 91% of the plumbing contractors say they see an impact on safety of 10% or more when they prefabricate, when they allow people to work in a factory setting rather than have to stick build these things on the project. And over 50% of everyone else reports the same. So while there's a slightly lower percentage who report improvements in worker safety, once they do, they tend to more often than not report relatively big impacts. Then finally, site logistics cost is our final one. Still high percentage, 71% who see an improvement. And we again see the plumbing contractors being the biggest beneficiaries of this. All right, so that's just the benefits of prefabrication. But let's dive into the broader benefits of BIM and also look at the obstacles to wider use. Now let's talk about benefits and obstacles reported by the mechanical contractors. So for benefits and obstacles, we took the same approach. We had a lot of benefits and a lot of obstacles that we wanted to ask about. So in each case, we divided it up into 2 separate lists. For benefits, it was project-related benefits and company-related benefits. Project-related benefits include everything like improved quality, improved schedule performance, better collaboration. And company-related benefits, include everything like seeing improved safety performance, increased profitability, better utilization of resources, enhancing their industry reputations. Now, from each of these lists, when we look at the findings, it's important that you understand that they were not asked, okay, what are you experiencing, or to rate the degree to which they were experiencing them. We really wanted to hone in on the benefits and the obstacles that make a difference to these contractors. So in the case for each of these 2 lists, they were asked to select their top 3 so that we could determine what are the top project-related benefits and what are the top company-related benefits. And we followed the exact same format in asking about obstacles. So we divided the obstacles into 2 groups. There's so many issues around skills and employees and people-related obstacles in general that we had that be a category of its own, training. And then we threw everything else that's not directly related to all those issues of manpower and training into the other obstacle category. And that includes everything from the cost of the hardware and the software to the lack of BIM support by other team members outside of their company to lack of adequate quality BIM content. So those are the obstacles we asked about. Now I'm going to go through each of the types of contractors. And you're going to see that while in some cases they're very different, especially when it comes to benefits, in some cases there is some alignment on obstacles and on some of the benefits too. So first let's look at the project benefits reported by sheet metal contractors. And you can see that reduced waste is by far what sheet metal contractors think they're getting out of using BIM in general, with improved cost performance also selected by a relatively high percentage among their top 3 choices out of the 8 possibilities. When it comes to their company benefits, the sheet metal contractors really valued the ability to win new work. They think BIM really enables that. They also saw increased labor productivity as a key top benefit. At least half ranked that first as well. When it comes to the obstacles for sheet metal contractors, again, amongst those people-related obstacles, it's other stakeholders on my projects not using BIM and the lack of available manpower to create BIM models. Those are the big challenges that they face. Those are the ones most frequently ranked in the top 3. When it comes to that list of other obstacles, for them, it really is about that lack of BIM support across the project team. They tied for first is poor quality BIM use by other stakeholders and lack of support for BIM from other important trades. And there's also a notable percentage who point to the lack of support for BIM from general contractors. So that's the sheet metal contractors. Now let's look at the mechanical piping contractors and here we get a three-way tie for the top project benefits. Improving the fabrication process for them is really a critical benefit, and you saw why in the previous section of this webinar. Why 46% would rank that in the top three. But they also see cost performance and reduced errors. So again, very different benefits emerge to the top from the ones we saw from the sheet metal contractors. When it comes to the company benefits, though, we again see increased labor productivity. It's a common theme, and the mechanical piping contractors, a high percentage, select that among their top three company benefits. And increased profitability also is a big benefit for mechanical piping contractors. When we look at their people-related obstacles, we see that training need for employees and lack of available manpower to create BIM models. It's the challenge of just not having enough people with the skills that they need, trying to get the BIM users up to the point they need them to be. Those are the big obstacles they face. And when it comes to the other obstacles, truthfully, none of these percentages are that high. Clearly, none of the other obstacles really emerge as the top ones. You could say lack of support from BIM from other trades at 40%, but really there's no uniting around a single obstacle or a couple of obstacles. All right, let's look at the plumbing contractors next. For them, the biggest project benefit is collaboration between stakeholders. They also see improved quality of installed work and even improved cost performance as critical, far more critical than the other benefits. Those are the top benefits that they're reporting. And again, we see labor productivity, one of the top benefits. And in fact, for plumbing contractors, it clearly ranks far above the second option, which is enhanced industry reputation. We also see that same kind of unanimity around the people-related obstacles, its training needs. The plumbing contractors really find that to be the biggest challenge. Keeping BIM skilled employees is also a challenge, and the lack of available manpower to create BIM models. So you can see that all ties together. And then among the other obstacles, plumbing contractors were the only ones who really pointed to the cost of the software as the biggest obstacle. Multi-trade contractors, we see that improving that fabrication process for them is by far the #1 benefit, although improved schedule is also selected by 49%. So again, very different project benefits. They experience project benefits very, very differently between the 4 different types of contractors, but not the company benefits. Increased labor productivity once again emerges at the top. Interestingly, better utilization of resources is also pretty important to multi-trade contractors, something we haven't seen in some of the others. People-related obstacles, that lack of available manpower to create BIM models and training needs, again, emerge at the top. And among the other obstacles, they are another group that are very sensitive to the use of BIM by the other stakeholders on the projects. Poor quality BIM use by other stakeholders, lack of support for BIM from other important trades. Those are the 2 top obstacles for them to improve their use of BIM. All right, so we just did a really detailed dive into the obstacles and benefits, but it can be a little overwhelming and it's a lot of data. So I thought I would end this section with giving you the overall findings rolled up into a 1 to 10 index that really rates the importance from the top benefits down. And this is all of, this is the key benefits that were asked about. This is not the total list though. Remember, it was lists of 7 and 8 on both sides. But when it comes to what they rank on top, by far increased labor productivity, #1. We saw that all the way through. What didn't necessarily emerge in the detailed findings, though, is that increased profitability also ranks very high on the overall index. And improving the fabrication process is also a pretty key overall benefit. So we see both the project and the business benefits emerging at the top. And going back to that productivity, the president of Western Allied really thinks that this productivity issue is going to be critical to them when they see a decline, possibly right now, in the construction market. that they now have a full circle of productivity tracking. As they design something, they can track data from previous projects and figure out how long it takes them to do things, which then feeds into their estimating and really helps them come up with better numbers from the start so that they can keep their profit margins, far more steady, because they really know how long it's going to take to do everything. It's not, it's a solid, really a true number. And this process, she thinks, is going to be one of the biggest things going forward that will help them be lean and mean when the economy turns again. All right, so let's look at the top, using that same kind of index rating of the overall responses. Let's look at what emerges as the top obstacles to using BIM. And it certainly can't be any surprise after going through the detailed finding that training need for employees and lack of available manpower to create BIM models is up at the top, that those are the key things. But then there's this secondary grouping right under that has to do, again, with the project team members. The lack of support for BIM from other trades, other stakeholders in my project not using BIM, and poor quality BIM use by other stakeholders emerges as a set of core issues for a relatively large percentage out there. And, the group managing director, Frieden Ayer, says that often by the time we come on board a project, the model's really progressed, and inevitably, the design almost needs to be re-engineered, sometimes redesigned from scratch. Early involvement to him is what really can help them see the benefits of BIM much more strongly. The managing director of E. Poppleton & Son, this is a UK company, said that they really see some strong disparity between the tier 1 and tier 2 general contractors and what they're doing with BIM, and the void that consists between their capabilities and the capabilities much further down the supply chain. And this is particularly interesting because remember, the UK actually has a mandate about BIM use. So, and what they're seeing is that even the mandate did not lead to a uniform adoption of BIM, that there's still an advantage that the tier 1 and tier 2 contractors have, and that the rest of the industry is chasing to catch up. So to wrap up, the top findings are that most mechanical contractors are responsible for producing a mechanical model on their project. 65% do it on half or more of their projects, and only 5% say that they're never responsible for doing so. That mechanical contractors are most frequently using BIM for analysis for shop drawings, spatial coordination, and constructability evaluation. That nearly all of the mechanical and HVAC contractors apply BIM to prefabrication. And over 80% report a wide variety of benefits, including key project indicators like schedule performance, quality, and labor costs. And then that the top benefits of just general BIM use for mechanical and HVAC contractors are increased labor productivity and increased profitability, and the top challenges have to do with training and lack of available manpower.